Okay, so today we're to a news report coming out of Papua New Guinea, and it's focusing on this like disagreement that's brewing around police counterterrorism operations.
Yeah.
And the very new Counterterrorism Act of 2024.
Right.
So we're working with a single source here, just this news report.
Yep.
And the mission is to really understand what the core of this disagreement is.
Absolutely.
And who's involved in this back and forth.
Yeah, the key players.
The key players,
Yeah.
right? So the news report really drops us right into the middle of a developing situation.
It does.
And like the two main individuals that the report highlights are Police Minister Peter Tsiamalili Jr.
Okay.
and East Sepik Governor Alan Bird.
Got it. So we've got
So right away we're dealing with,
different levels of government.
different levels of government.
Yeah.
And the core of the news is that Minister Tsiamalili Jr. is directly refuting statements made by Governor Bird.
Interesting.
So this act of countering claims is what we're really going to try to unpack here.
I see. So it's not even necessarily the content of the claims.
Right.
It's the back and forth.
It's the back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, so the report states that Minister Tsiamalili Jr. has labeled Governor Bird's comments as, quote, misleading to the public.
Okay.
And this is regarding these counterterrorism operations and the new 2024 Act.
Right.
So first of all, that's like a pretty strong statement, right? To
Yeah.
say misleading to the public.
Yeah. To publicly call someone out like that is pretty strong.
Yeah. Especially when you think about the fact that, this Counterterrorism Act is quite new.
Right. Very new.
Even though the report doesn't give us like the specifics of when it was implemented.
Yeah.
It's recent,
Yeah.
its recent introduction.
Right.
Likely adds, another layer of sensitivity to how it's being talked about and how it's being, implemented.
For sure. Yeah.
So having that context,
Yeah. Adds to the weight.
adds to the weight of this accusation.
Yeah,
Right?
definitely. And what's so interesting to me is that the report doesn't actually tell us what Governor Bird said.
Exactly.
That was deemed, misleading.
Right. It's like,
It's just that it was misleading.
yeah,
But like what was actually said?
right.
That's kind of the question.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder like, okay,
What's going on here?
what's going on here? What are the underlying issues?
Totally.
Is this a case of, different perceptions of national security at the national level versus at the regional level?
That's possible.
Or is this just like a miscommunication
Yeah.
that's kind of blown up into the public sphere?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly possible.
Right.
It does make you think about, what the motivations are here for the police minister to so publicly rebut these statements,
Yeah. How was that necessary?
Why was that necessary?
Especially when we don't even know what the statements were.
Right.
So it seems like there must be some kind of narrative that's gaining traction.
Right. That the minister is, concerned about and wants to get ahead of.
Yeah, push back against.
Push back against, right?
And I mean, public trust really relies on clear communication.
Absolutely. Especially when you're talking
Like
about
these topics, right?
yeah, super sensitive topics like counterterrorism,
Yeah.
the application of new laws.
Exactly.
I mean, this is huge.
So for our listener, this highlights, a potentially significant dynamic
Yeah,
that's happening in Papua New Guinea right now.
for sure.
We're seeing this disagreement play out very publicly
Right.
about how counterterrorism efforts are being understood
Right.
and how they're being talked about.
Huh.
Particularly, given that there's this new legislation.
Right. In the context of this new law.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And what I think is so interesting is just the act of the rebuttal itself.
Yeah.
Regardless of the specifics of what Governor Bird's initial statements were,
Right.
the fact that the minister had such a strong response, really shapes the conversation in the public sphere.
Absolutely. It frames it.
It frames it right.
It says, hey, there are at least two sides to this,
Yeah.
and this is my side.
Yeah. And it makes you think about how easily public understanding can be shaped by these,
By these pronouncements, by these denials.
by these like very direct denials and the way things are framed.
Yeah.
The power of framing something as misleading is significant.
It's huge, and it raises a really crucial point for you, the listener.
Yeah.
When you see public figures like this directly contradicting each other, especially when you don't have all of the information. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have those original statements from the governor.
Right.
How do you assess the situation?
How do you figure out what's really going on?
Yeah, it really underscores the importance of looking for those different angles
Right.
and, understanding the motivations behind these public pronouncements.
Right. Like, why is this person saying this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so that you can kind of form a more complete picture of what's happening.
Yeah, because you can't just take what one person is saying
No.
as the truth,
Nope.
right?
Especially in a situation like this where
Yeah.
it's so politically charged.
So the core of this deep dive is really the public refutation itself.
Right.
This act of, one prominent figure pushing back against the statements of another.
Exactly.
It's a small window, but it's a window nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a glimpse into something bigger.
Right, into, these larger discussions around security and governance in Papua New Guinea.
Absolutely.
And for you, the listener, as you reflect on this, think about how often these moments of disagreement drive the public discourse.
It happens all the time, right?
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And how important it is to understand the context surrounding those disagreements.
Exactly, because the context is everything.
The context is everything.
Yeah. All right, that's it for our deep dive today.
See you next time.
Bye.